Big thanks to Lustre for sponsoring today's video. So we're checking out the Portico entry-level keyboard today from TKC. It's a 65% polycarb board. I have two of these in-house. One is a really early sample and one is like a final pre-production that should be pretty close to, if not exactly like what you'll get if you were fortunate enough to get in on the pre-order. So we'll run down all the features, get a good sound comparison, and we'll do a really detailed head-to-head conclusion of it versus the NK65. You ready? Let's go! So the Portico is the newest entry-level bare bones board from the Key company. It retails for $119. The pre-sale on these, unfortunately, is already closed. They are expected to hit sometime late March, and I do get the impression there will be some extras. So if you missed out, there's still a chance. Since this is a bare bones kit, there are no switches or caps included. You'll need to provide these for yourself. What is included is a zippered case, the board, a cable, plus the matching equal stabilizer set that corresponds with your case color. That makes it an interesting project because there is some assembly required. Namely, you're going to need to assemble and install the stabilizers, which are PCB mount. This is nice because it gives you the ability to lube the stabs if you want, as you assemble them, which you should. And that's not to say they're poor quality stabs or that they need it, but I'm gonna personally lube everything you give me the opportunity to. It's also important to point out that because these are PCB mount, which is widely considered to be superior to plate mount, you will need to disassemble the board if you ever want to access these in the future. In a hot swap board with plate mount stabs like the NK65 or the drop boards, you can access the stabs as easy as removing the switch. Not the case here, but the trade-off is that the selection of plate mount stabs in the aftermarket is very limited versus PCB mount. There are a ton of options out there. TKC also includes these little bump-on stickers, really low profile with a rubberized texture, and these function the same way as a Band-Aid mod. They're still kind of a pain in the ass to get off the backing. I'd like to see these improved in the future. Lastly, the stems and the stabilizers are designed in such a way that they're already flat on the bottom, so no clipping necessary here either. I'm actually pretty impressed with these stabs. And speaking of things I'm pretty impressed with, let's talk about today's sponsor, Lustre. Lustre is a free shopping tool and browser extension that takes product info, pricing, and reviews from all over the internet and puts it all together in one place. It does so much work for you. Here's what I mean. Say you're looking for a new gaming headset for your PC or your console and you've got a budget of about $100. Lustre's gonna go to work and show you the top 5 best options out there at that price point. Solid picks too. We've got the Razer Blackshark V2 in there, we've got the HyperX Cloud and Alpha, and it's not their opinions. You can see where they pulled reviews and ratings from. Credible spots too, like ratings.com, SoundGuys, PC Mag. You can see any scores or awards. You can see a brief comparison of important points, such as console support. You can even click through to read or watch the full reviews to dig a little deeper. They'll also show you the best pricing out there at big retailers and can alert you to sale prices. This is a huge time saver compared to just like typing best gaming headsets into a search engine and sifting through the results yourself. Lustre is totally free to use. It works right in Google, Amazon, or your browser and can save you a ton of both time and money when you're shopping for your perfect product. Click the link in the description to sign up today. Thanks again to Lustre for sponsoring, and thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Assembly is easy enough for a beginner, but they do have some pretty thorough build guides available to help you out along the way. This board breaks down into essentially 6 pieces. So you'll have the case, top and bottom, as well as a silicone dampening mat, the PCB, the felt dampening mat, and the plate. Yep, there are 2 different acoustic solutions present in this board, and they do a really nice job. In my experience, if you do wind up with any unwanted acoustics, chances are those are coming from the switches and not from the board itself. The big thing that sets it apart from other entry levels out there is the gasket mount design. The plate here is FR4, some fiberglass, the same stuff they make PCBs out of, but you can see it's really flexible. So they have these squishy pads, 8 total, and these are actually going to be sandwiched in between the case top and bottom. The plate then sits over the felt dampener, so the whole plate assembly has some bounce to it. Now, full disclosure, I am at a disadvantage here because I've never used gasket mount on any other keyboard, so I can't tell you how the implementation here compares to other higher end boards. But what I can say is that this makes for a really enjoyable typing experience, and I don't get any obnoxious or unwanted noise from the board. I'm a heavy typer too. I blow backs out of switches. This does hit a lot different than like a heavy brass plate, and they both have their perks, but I really like the action on the key bed here. I greatly prefer it to an aluminum plate. On the clear board, I've got the Kiwis in there wearing the Infinity Amalfi set by Nathan Alphaman, and on the black build, I've got some custom Polar Pandas and Infinity Aether from Alexotos. Switch choice today was strategic because the Kiwis have a pretty high-pitched sound to them versus the Polar Pandas that have like that lower, thawkier sound. So we'll listen to a few different setups, most of which are wearing Infinity sets, so keycap material doesn't become a variable. So the Portico definitely has a higher pitch overall versus the NK65, regardless of the switch or keycap material. The combo of TKC switches and Portico results in the highest pitch out of the group. Whether you prefer a higher or lower pitch is all down to personal preference. You'll notice that I lubed the stabs on the clear version and did not do that on the black version, so you could hear the difference. All in all, I think they sound much better lubed. So as for the overall build of the board, it is an entry-level board, so the case itself is very basic. The polycarbonate material feels kind of cheap, like it's a softer feeling plastic than on the NK65. I like it much better in black than I do clear. I don't want to critique these specific samples too much because they are early samples, so you can expect that they'll be a little rough in spots. The USB-C connection is center mounted and it sits really flush to the case, which means you will have some of that actual connector exposed as opposed to the NK65, which is recessed a bit to hide that. There's no height adjust or flip down feet on the case. The overall height is fairly consistent with the NK65. On the underside of the board for slip resistance, you're limited to just these 4 bump-ons in the corners. They're pretty hard durometer too, so it does move around a little. Nothing during typing, it's not gonna like slide out on you, but if you bump it even slightly, it will move. It is good to see that they opted to go with a true badge on the rear of the case. The sticker is only present on the earliest prototype I have. This is what you'll actually get when you order. The hot swap sockets here are Kale. They do support 5-pin switches, so no clipping, and like the NK65, they are south-facing. This is generally preferred by keyboard purists because it alleviates any potential interference between cherry profile caps and north-facing switches. But it can create an issue for people looking for cheaper backlit cap options because that LED is not going to align with the transparent legends in most cases. I know they played around a lot with the tolerances for the switch openings on the plate. They landed pretty generous on these, but they seem to be pretty much tailored to TKC switches. So while you're pulling caps, if you're using switches from another brand, you're more likely than not to pull the switches out with them. Personally, that doesn't bother me at all. I would much rather have that be the case than to try to wrestle with and risk damaging my nice switches. But some of you have commented on that before and you interpret that as a sign of quality, so there you go. All the remapping and control for this board is handled by VIA, so remapping is super easy. As for the RGB, there are no per key RGB options that I can find, but you'll have access to a ton of different modes you can cycle between, including single color, and you can control hue, saturation, speed, and brightness, all on the function layer. RGB here is solid as far as RGB goes. It does have underglow. Unsurprisingly, it doesn't really hit on the black case, not to be confused with smoke, which will be more transparent. It does punch pretty good on the clear board, and you'll get that full case glow, mostly in low light or total darkness. You lose a lot of the effect with light in the room. So to wrap all this up, at $119, I think this is definitely a worthy competitor to the NK65 entry, which comes in at $95 US. The sound dampening in the NK65 is very good as well, and I think it comes down to how you want your board to sound. The Portico is a very clean sound. I personally prefer the lower pitch sound of the NK65, which honestly kind of sucks for me because I like the typing experience of the Portico with that gasket mount a lot better. I like the flex of that fiberglass plate a lot more than the aluminum plate in the NK65. The Portico has the underglow, the NK65 does not. The rubber feet situation is better on the NK65, but not enough to be a deciding factor for me, and I dislike center mounted cables almost as much as I dislike right side mounted cables, though the Portico loses a couple points for leaving you with this section of exposed connector. NK65 has the Iancar PCB, no specific branding on the Portico PCB, both have VIA, both have south-facing switches, but the Portico gets a big W for PCB mount stabs. It was an interesting and surprisingly tough fight, but I feel like for most people, the Portico is going to edge out the NK65 just based on that gasket mount and the PCB mount stabs. Plus, if you're new to all this, having to do something as simple as assemble and install your stabs, which requires you to disassemble and then reassemble your board, gives you a deeper dive into the hobby and potentially a greater sense of ownership over the finished build. If you pre-ordered, look for these to arrive probably mid to late March, and there will be extras, so hit the links for all the TKC feeds to stay up to date. And that's it for this time. I'm Brian P. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to hit that like button, hit that sub button, and until next time, stay up.